This is the Dollemore Daily, and I'm Jesse Dollemore.
You know, I love what I do. Certainly love what I do. I'm blessed. I'm privileged to be in a position to have a YouTube channel where people tune in about the things that I talk about. But it's nights like this, nights like last night, the Republican National Convention, that it's kind of a bummer. Trying to watch wall-to-wall nonsense. Minute after minute after minute after minute of lie after lie. It wears on anybody, but it wears on me. Anyway, last night was another one of those nights where just a litany of speakers who tell wanton, obvious, insane lies, who project, accuse Joe Biden and the Democratic establishment and the Democrats of the very things that Donald Trump is doing in public, not even trying to hide it. Acting like the Democratic Party is the party of bigotry, is the party of intolerance, is the party of rife corruption and self-dealing and unethical, immoral behavior. When that's what the Republicans are doing day after day, year after year of the Donald Trump administration. Worse than any time, save maybe the Nixon administration. But even the Nixon administration pales in comparison. So, first, before I get into some of the speakers I'm going to talk about, I want to talk about a speaker that was disinvited. Mary Ann Mendoza, who the day before her speaking moment at the Republican National Convention, a national stage she's being given, she tweets about the Jews taking over the world, and please read this QAnon nonsense. The Daily Beast wrote an article, they uncovered these tweets. Marianne Mendoza, RNC speaker canceled after boosting QAnon conspiracy theory about Jewish plot to enslave the world. The Democratic Party doesn't have this kind of problem. When's the last time the Democrats needed a do-over because they invited a racist, conspiracy theory nutterbutter to speak? From the article, one of the speakers for the second night of the Republican National Convention was pulled from the program after the Daily Beast surfaced a tweet from her earlier in the day urging her followers to investigate a supposed Jewish plot to enslave the world. Quote, "Do yourself a favor and read this thread," unquote, Marianne Mendoza, who is a member of Donald Trump's campaign advisory board, tweeted to her more than 40,000 followers Tuesday morning. Hours earlier, Mendoza had linked to a lengthy thread from a QAnon conspiracy theorist that laid out a fevered anti-Semitic view of the world. In its telling, the Rothschilds, a famous Jewish banking family from Germany, created a plot to terrorize non-Jewish Goyim with purported details of their scheme that included plans to make the Goyim destroy each other and rob the Goyim of their landed properties. Donald Trump Advisory Board invited to speak, and then only because of the shame and the public stigma of this nuttiness and this anti-Semitism did they pull the invitation. Come on. And then there's this gem, Abby Johnson, who is a liar and a rabid conspiracy theorist, anti-abortion wingnut. And I'm not going to play any of her speech because it's just filled with lies, things that can be verified as being false in her story. The true reason she's bitter right now, from what I've read, is that she's disgruntled because she got fired from Planned Parenthood for being a terrible employee and a gossip. causing drama everywhere she went. But she took to Twitter in May, again, invited to speak at the Republican National Convention. She took to Twitter in May and voiced her opinion that women really shouldn't have the right to vote, that we should have something called household voting. And if the woman doesn't agree with the man, in a godly household, the man decides who the household will vote for. Here are those tweets. She says, "What's the most controversial thing you believe?" Here's another one. "I would support bringing back household voting. How anti-feminist of me," she says wryly and pompously. And she's questioned about it. "What's household voting?" "Well, each household would get one vote." "Interesting idea," the Twitter person replies, "but what happens when the husband is a Republican and the wife is a Democrat, or vice versa?" She answers, "Then they would have to decide on one vote. In a godly household, the husband would get the final say." Invited to speak at the Republican National Convention to an audience of millions, raising the profile of this idiot who does not believe in equality, who does not believe fundamentally in women's suffrage. Invited to speak. And then there's the former Attorney General of the state of Florida, Pam Bondi, who was also on Donald Trump's defense team during the impeachment trial. Pam Bondi went on and on and on and whined about two standards in America, where the elite get to have one standard and then the rest of us have to operate by a whole different set of standards. Again, projection. Here it is.
How many American families would be allowed to get away with this? Why should there be one standard for the elite political class and another set of rules for the rest of us? When millions of Americans voted for Donald Trump, they knew he'd be different, and he is. He's a tough, no-nonsense outsider who can't be bought or intimidated. If they want to make this election a choice between who's saving America and who's swindling America, bring it on.
Is she high? Was she dipping into the stash from night one of Guilfoyle, Donald Trump Jr.'s girlfriend, and him? What is she talking about? She's complicit in this. Not only are there photo after photo of her hanging out with Lev Parnas, who is up to his neck in this corruption in the Ukraine thing relative to the impeachment, Giuliani's buddy, Donald Trump's buddy, but also she dropped an investigation into Trump University when she was the Attorney General of Florida 4 days after she got a check from him for $25,000. There were 23 complaints about Trump University in 2011. Her office said that they were going to determine whether Florida should join this multi-state case that was brought against Donald Trump for fraud relative to Trump University, which he settled. And after they made that statement that they were going to determine whether they were going to further the investigation, 4 days later, a check for $25,000 from Donald J. Trump Foundation, the charity donated $25,000 to her campaign. Again, not a surprise that Donald Trump no longer can legally be involved in charities in the state of New York, because that's how he dealt with his money. The money that was supposed to be earmarked for kids with cancer, he donated to Pam Bondi so she would drop the investigation into his fraudulent activities related to Trump University. Trump University. Invited to speak at the Republican National Convention. And then Melania. Then Melania came goose-stepping out in this number. This Gestapo, German World War II looking outfit. Does anybody believe that she speaks 5 or 6 languages? I mean, come on. Does anybody believe that? Has anybody even heard her speak 5 or 6 languages? Has anybody heard her speak more than 2? Well, 3 if you count racism. If racism is a language, she speaks it. There's a lot of people out there who have some emotional attachment to Melania Trump, who believe that she is not complicit in Donald Trump's corruption and his hatred and his division and his racism. She is. Here's a clip of her doubling down on the birtherism, the racist birtherism conspiracy theory about Obama not being born in America.
But what is this with the birth certificate obsession? Did he ask to see yours when you met him?
I needed to put mine anyway, because if you want to become an American citizen, you need to put the birth certificate.
Right.
I have a birth certificate from Slovenia. And do you want to see President Obama birth certificate or not?
I've seen it.
It's not a birth certificate.
Well, it's a certificate of live birth,
right,
which they get. But Melania, if he insists on what he's saying, then no one in Hawaii can ever run for president, because they all get the same live birth certificate.
Well, but they need to have...
Midler is finished, for example.
They need to have, and in one way, it will be very easy if President Obama just show it, and because it's not only Donald who wants to see it. It's American people who voted for him and who didn't vote for him. They want to see that.
But it's on display in Chicago. We've seen it on the internet. We've seen it. It's not the same as yours, but it's a certificate of live birth.
Well, we feel it's different than birth certificate.
All right. Well, I think you should give it up at this point.
Well, it's not. It's not him that it's bringing up. It's the media all the time.
So apparently, blaming the media for their problems and their woes and their racism was something they adopted early on. Let's get to her speech. There was one moment in the speech I want to talk about. And, well, we're just going to play it. We'll play it. We'll talk about it. Here it is.
Like all of you, I have reflected on the racial unrest in our country. It is a harsh reality that we are not proud of parts of our history. I encourage people to focus on our future while still learning from our past. We must remember that today we are all one community comprised of many races, religions, and ethnicities. Our diverse and storied history is what makes our country strong, and yet we still have so much to learn from one another. With that in mind, I like to call on the citizens of this country to take a moment, pause, and look at things from all perspectives. I urge people to come together in a civil manner so we can work and live up to our standard American ideals. I also ask people to stop the violence and looting being done in the name of justice, and never make assumptions based on the color of a person's skin. Instead of tearing things down, let's reflect on our mistakes, be proud of our evolution, and look to our way forward.
That is Melania Trump paying nothing but lip service to the current racial situation in our country. Paying lip service to our nation's history of brutality against black men and women. Systemic police brutality and killing and racism. Lip service. She talks about focusing on the future while learning from our past. Says that We're all one community comprised of many races, religions, and ethnicities. We're all just one community, y'all. Is that so, Melania Trump? Well, how about the members of our one community who are at multiples greater risk of dying at the hands of police while unarmed? The members of our one community who happen to be black. Earlier in the speech, she talked about visiting a slave shipment operation from the past in Africa, and how it really touched her heart to learn about the pain of the Middle Passage and whatever she said. So she acknowledges our country's relatively unique situation relative to the intergenerational transference of trauma to black Americans. And then she said, let's focus on the future. Let's learn from our past, but let's focus on the future. You'll notice she did not mention cops. She says violence and looting should stop, and tearing down is no good. She doesn't mention the killing, the murder of unarmed American citizens in the streets by jackbooted thugs, by armed agents of the state. No mention of that. Only the looting and the few buildings that have burned. Let me tell you something. If I was a member of a community that for generations had knees on their necks, murdering them, you're goddamn right there would be buildings that would be burning. Instead of tearing things down, let's reflect. The season for reflection is over, Melania Trump. It is over. The season for action is now. The season for action for the American people to vote you out of a house is now. Donald Trump sends these goons, these mindless automatons, these sycophants, these bootlickers, including his wife, who has agency. She can decide whether or not to be complicit in this. And she has chosen. Pam Bondi has chosen. Abby Johnson has chosen. Every other speaker who took to this stage chose. And it won't be forgotten. November 3rd is your time of action. If the time for reflection is over, November 3rd is your time to act. I'd love to know what you think. 714-576-4054. Email me daily@dollemore.com. I want to hear from you. I want to connect with you. Connect with me on social media. Instagram, Twitter, whichever order it is. I appreciate you. Thank you for connecting with my, engaging with my content. Thank you for liking and sharing and subscribing and doing all the YouTube stuff. It's going to be a long haul. Got about 69 or 70 more days. A couple more days of this Republican National Convention. We're going to get through this. I love you guys. I appreciate you. I'll see you next time. Be genuine. Take care of one another.